We're moving on to our next panel in this second part of the conference on the how chapter, so to say. And it's my pleasure to have Kambis Kohansal-Vajargah with us, Head of Startup Services at Austrian Federal Economic Chamber. Kambis, great to have you here. I just hand over to you to take over the next panel. Have fun, and I'm looking forward to your discussion.
Thank you very much, Dejan, for this warm introduction, a nice introduction. Thank you, and hello everyone to the audience, to the very international audience. I'm very happy to lead this panel discussion with three very amazing and exciting panelists I will introduce in a moment. Before that, again, for the audience, you can ask questions in the chat as well, and I will try to pick some of them for our panelists at the very end. So we have like roughly 30 minutes for our panel discussion, and then we're going to move into the Q&A. So let's start with the panel topic today. It's about international ecosystems in comparison. So we're trying to compare like the ecosystem when it comes to spin-offs. What are boosters and what are challenges? And I'm happy to have a very interesting choice of panelists because the background is very diverse when it comes to this topic. I will give you a short introduction to them in a moment. So I will start with Marius Rosenberg, who is a life science entrepreneur and investor. He was formerly the managing director at the Excellence Startup Center at RWTH Aachen, a very formidable technical university in Germany. He's now the co-founder and managing partner of Adhesis Medical. I hope I spelled it right. Marius, you can correct me later on. So he has a very good expertise when it comes to spin-off, health, biotech, but he will introduce himself or will give some info about him later on as well during the discussion. And he's someone who has very much entrepreneurial experience. I think that's very important to mention. Then we have Orsolya Ihasz. She is the co-founder of Collab 8 Consulting and the director of Cranfield Venture Programs. She's also a senior lecturer at the Bethany Center for Entrepreneurship. So she's actually lecturing when it comes to entrepreneurship, universitarian spin-offs, and so on. Also, I think it's like I'm not sure if it's an alumni or not, but you can correct me as well, from University of Cambridge. At last, we have Mart, Maasik, investment director at UniTartu Ventures and head of entrepreneurship at the University of Tartu. Very experienced entrepreneur, board member, angel investor, so also the investor side. And he co-founded the Innovation Leaders Club in Estonia. So welcome all of you, Marius, Orsolya, Mart. Good to have you here. Yeah, I told you about like the questions in the chat. If you're interested, the audience, you can just ask a question. I will pick them out later on. So let's start let's head right into the panel discussion. And we're gonna, just to give you a clarification, we have three main topics when it comes to this topic. We have the entrepreneurial mindset as one of the topics. Then we have everything related to regulations and bureaucracy. And third, more the macroeconomic perspective. So the political, economic views, the ecosystem perspective, because all these three different factors are relevant when it comes to having the right ecosystem, to actually make spin-offs in a specific region flourishing. So I will start with actually Orsolya with the first question with you. So about raising an entrepreneurial mindset. So how do you build an entrepreneurial culture? How do you transform researchers into becoming entrepreneurs? Is it really a transformation? What is necessary? Just give us a heads up on this from your side.
Thank you, Kambis, for introducing me, and then welcome everybody onto this panel. It's great to know how many of you are out there internationally and then nationally as well. So all excited and want to be part of this entrepreneurial ecosystem build. So yes, Kambis, you're right. I'm an alumni, so I spent 12 years in Cambridge before I gone to Cranfield, and I'm still in Cambridge. And Jesus College is where I do a lot of work around still entrepreneurial mindset development for the public sector, actually, rather than now for the researcher sector. But I've been in the entrepreneurship education field in the past 17 years. And when I joined Cambridge first, and when I got there are certain elements, I guess, around this entrepreneurial mindset. So I'm myself a Hungarian. So it's not really something that traditionally was built into my educational system, that be entrepreneurial. And when I entered into the system of Cambridge University, but also trying to work together with MIT on understanding what is the core elements of helping scientists and researchers to really unlock the entrepreneurial potential. It's an entrepreneurial potential, it's a mindset shift. And that entrepreneurial mindset, I think, is one of the core driving factor of a vibrant ecosystem, because that mindset is actually enabling scientists, researchers to see opportunities beyond the science itself, and then connect those opportunities with technologies, with scientific outcomes, with research, is the communication and transformation of science into opportunities that can move the economy forward. And these days, with all of the drivers around the Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals throughout the whole sort of transformation of the last sort of years, what we see that the agenda is really pushing on a national and on an international level for scientists and researchers to really think about the impact of their work and where does that impact will actually create change for society and for economy. And then we're living in this socio-technological world where skills that scientists and researchers are needing are actually skills that go beyond their scientific knowledge. It is actually the transformation and understanding of opportunities, the transformation of science into impact, the communication of science, and collaboration, co-creation is an absolute crucial part of that entrepreneurial mindset. And the other element is, which I would say, and this is my last comment on that, when it's about the entrepreneurial mindset, is what is our view on the view of failure and risk. There's the two elements that we need to see. What is the appetite and what is the perception? And then I think in a mindset change, changing the perception around how do we take risk, but also how do we approach failure is an absolutely crucial part for our scientists to be equipped with.
Well, thank you very much, Orsolya, for this first perspectives. I think very important. So we have heard about like the co-creation, collaboration on the one hand, and the risk-taking culture on the other. I think it's a very important point. We're also going to talk in a moment about like how to implement more like entrepreneurial mindsets, particularly in research institutions, because you have the experience there. So Marius, what's your take on this?
So yeah, I can go first. So I think entrepreneurship and founding your own company needs to be exciting and sexy to researchers and students. Yeah, to put it very direct, because and that is a mindset shift for many people. So as you mentioned, I created my company as a spin-off from the Technical University during my PhD. And I saw a lot of people who were, just focusing on their work. So for them, the goal was to become a professor, become a scientist. So, and everything that was not that was sort of evil. And founding a company was rather perceived as a failure for many scientists, because sort of you didn't achieve it in the academic world, then a success. So I think we have to change this first in the mindset of the people, that actually this is the most attractive way of turning your research into reality, right? So if you just write a paper, if you publish your result, this will evaporate very quickly. But if you start a company, this is something that is living, that stays on forever if you're lucky and if you're doing a good job. And so it needs to be attractive for the people founding the companies, for one. And how do we get that? I think this needs to cascade through through the ranks of the university. So the professors need to emphasize this. They need to tell their PhD students that this is a good thing, that it is not all about publishing. It's not all about sort of the scientific merits, but that actually founding a company is a much greater achievement than everything else, because this is the way you bring a technology into society. It's not just about publishing and writing a patent, because if you just do that, nobody is going to use it. You have to do the step and create a company. And then the third thing is that we need to put positive examples. We need to put them on a stage and let them talk and let them present to students and let them tell, okay, we went that way. So, for example, the success of BioNTech, like as the landmark where scientists started the company and then did something great with it. I think those are really good examples that really show that that scientists can transform the world if they let their research go into the real world and not just sit on an academic shelf.
Okay, just to sum it up, so you're depicting the important role of the professors actually, that actually
Yes.
can push this topic forward. Initially,
professors and role models, yes,
and role models, and initially this tunnel vision. That's the only goal and life goal achievement, whatever, is to become a professor, to do research, but not like going into the entrepreneurial path, which actually has changed over time. And which is important, to actually accelerate this kind of development in this research institution. Okay, because one of my questions will also be how to incentivize the professors actually to push this forward. Mart.
Yes, I agree with many statements already made. So I think, yes, and I think the key is really the role models in my view, the people. So it's not about that. Of course, my job is to tell about become an entrepreneur, and this is a fun journey. But I think when the people who have been on that journey telling the story, I think this is the key. And I think Estonia is a bit of like a unique situation from that point of view, that we have been surprisingly very successful for building the tech companies overall. I think 10 unicorns per 1.3 million people in the country. And I think we have this, not deep tech entrepreneurs, but we have the tech entrepreneurs. And this is, I think, a good example already that we try to replicate, because we still have lack of those great tech success stories from the entrepreneurial side who are having locally become as a deep tech entrepreneurs. But I think what we try to do, we try to kind of build a parallel and build the bridges between the tech startup builders and also deep tech builders, and making the analogs. Of course, the background is different, the risks are different, and time to market and multiple things are not applicable. But the mindset, still this entrepreneurial mindset, this is universal, and that we can really convert to the academical situation, and that we do, and that quite successfully. I could say that those role models are inspiring, and they are also another kind of great cases that they are giving back to the society. So the people who have been like the first time successful entrepreneurs, they are willing to others to also succeed. And that's another like the part which is, I think, the good in this ecosystem point of view, to build this kind of self-fulfilling loop and helping the first time entrepreneurs. That is, I think, the hardest part, to being the first time entrepreneur. When you're building to the second and third company, then already you know the game more or less, so how to build it. But to be really the first time entrepreneur, and especially when you're coming from the research background side. And maybe another like the dimension also what we see is the good way forward is that kind of like in a society there is the different studies about, but 10% of people are entrepreneurs, not more, so by definition. And this is not tolerated. The risk and uncertainty is not convenient for most of the people, so it means that it's not about one researcher who have to build this entrepreneurial mindset, but it's about the team. Quite often I think knowing what you know and who you are and who you are not, and who you are looking for next to each other. So I think this is another way also forward, that to building the team, and then you're combining together the different backgrounds, and then you can say this kind of entrepreneurship mindset is there, but also researcher mindset still is there. So I think kind of melting it together and learning by piece, this type of mindset. So it is hard to build those matchmakings, but I think it's another like the way forward, I believe, to build systematical way to embed this entrepreneurship mindset to the traditional academical journeys.
Great insights on this. So before we move into the more bureaucratic and regulatory like side within organizations, do you have like further recommendations when it comes to like incentivizing professors or how to incentivize professors? Very concrete examples in order to move into this direction, apart from what you already said? Anything you want to add on this to everyone?
Yeah,
Marius?
I'm happy to add. So I think first of all, it starts with the strategy of a university or research institution. I think you have to start at the top and really say, we want to be an entrepreneurial university. Yeah, and it needs to cascade down then through the ranks of the professors. And usually, like at RWTH Aachen University, where I ran the Entrepreneurship Center, we had 550 professors. So you will never reach everybody. But if the leadership of the university is going to say, okay, we have this in our focus, then this is good. So in the second strategy, the second thing is you need to have clear guidelines. Yeah, it needs to be clear what is also a professor allowed to do, because in many universities it's still a gray zone. Are they allowed to take capital in a startup? If yes, how much capital? If the PhD students are still their PhD students, there's also sort of a hierarchical relationship between then potentially a founder and the professor. So you need to have clarity on the governance, because otherwise you have insecurity about also, am I allowed to promote this? Am I allowed to push my PhD students into that direction? And then the third thing is, and here it becomes complicated, is actually to put it into the target agreements with professors. So right now, many professors are ranked purely on scientific publication, and then sometimes on patents. And I would really strongly advocate to put like entrepreneurial output into that ranking as well, so that people are celebrated and sort of incentivized to do that. And you can incentivize this also by giving them sort of most precious resource for a professor is time. So you can incentivize them very much by telling them, okay, you get sort of a free semester to focus on entrepreneurial stuff. You get like a sabbatical semester, for example. You get a reduction in teaching responsibilities for a certain time to focus on a specific startup. So those are the things that really, from my perspective, incentivize the professor to do it. And then I would also always encourage that a professor takes a certain amount of equity in a company, but not dominating the company. It's also very important. So rather like 2 to 4% is, from my perspective, sort of the sweet spot. So if the startup is successful, they also feel it financially as a positive impact. But on the other hand, not that they dominate the company and become maybe a liability if the company wants to get venture financing. So it's a balance, yeah. But it needs to go through all hierarchies of the university with the strategy, with guidelines, the compliance, and then down to the professor, who then has very clarity about how he or she can actually support the startups.
Mm-hmm. So start from the top, put it into the target agreements with the professors, give them some equity, but not too much. Orsolya, I think you want to say something, yeah?
Yes, I'm going to tackle this not from a professor level, if that's okay. I'm going to tackle it from more of a postdoc level. So there's a lot of postdocs at the universities that are actually, so the traditional way we build academia is a traditional way of you are going into that postdoc route, and then that postdoc route gives you the sort of senior research elements. And I think somewhere there, I think, while it has to be a strategy of the university that push the agenda forward for supporting the entrepreneurial spirit across universities, but I think there's a lot of responsibility for us that how are we actually giving opportunities for postdocs to be given, to be trained beyond science. There are certain soft skills that comes with entrepreneurship. That's the sense of the communication part, the fact of like, why do you need to do this? What is the impact of your work? How do you unlock that impact of your work? How do you actually learn basic skills of business? Something that helps you to communicate the outcome of your scientific research into a business case, which is understood by the investors or understood by institutions. And I think this is where the role of universities and entrepreneurship centers across has a huge responsibility to create that that culture within the university that gives postdocs and researchers as well a pathway to see what entrepreneurship can be. And when we started the Entrepreneurship Center for Entrepreneurial Learning in Cambridge, or when Dr. Shai Virkanam started it, and I was part of the team, one of the most important elements was that we also saw the role model concept that we need to include entrepreneurs who are actually part of the teaching, but also part of creating that social capital and social networks. And I'm sure that, Herman Hauser already mentioned that the connection of people within an ecosystem comes from both ends. So you need to build up the interest, and you need to enable researchers to see why entrepreneurship is a route and a pathway. And it kind of sort of links into what Mart was saying, that how do you help them to understand what risk and failure is? And then how do you help them to build up their own pathways to tackle that? And not all of the researchers are, as you probably noticed as well, the best to become and grow a company, but they could be extremely good at being part of a company as well, of a startup, building teams where they can find their own strengths and niche rather than just looking at the individual growth path.
Mm-hmm. So we're actually also talking about the communication aspect and the vision aspect, and that's very important to show these students and researchers and so on what's the potential outcome out of it. Totally understand, makes totally sense. I would move to the next question if it's okay for you, Mart, but we can start with you if you want. So going more into the regulatory and bureaucratic framework within organizations. So based on your experience, are there do's and don'ts when it comes to, let's say, the intellectual property, the processes overall? I mean, you mentioned already some of the points, but something specific that you want to give to the audience as well regarding this?
Yeah, I think it is quite critical topic, and I think, yes, it's for navigating for all the counterparties, for investors' point of view, for the founders' point of view, and from the university's point of view. I think how we are building the common goal, I think this is the key, what we have seen, and we also iterated a lot what is the right way of dealing with the IP transfer. And I think one of the key learning is that you have to agree the rule of the game before the game starts. So I think this is the part you cannot change that during the time, and there is, I think, some perception from investment community side, but there's also, I think, from the researcher side that it's really hard to find a common ground with university. And then the simplification is the key here, and also making this road as visible as possible, that which are possible steps, and also leaving the kind of the choice or the driving on the driving seat the founder, so that they will decide that do they want to get some services or value from university or they don't. And this is kind of key good reflection also for the university's back, that if they're not using some of the services, probably there is not enough value. So and then you don't have argument to negotiate this part of it. So making it as a founder's choice, I think this is a good first principle, and making this the journey as possibly transparent as you can. So I think, and that's, I think we have learned the logic, so that it's a bit of like the Swedish model part of it, that we are in our case is that what we believe is that we are not taking the hard position about the IP which is created by the same team, and this is the value that we're creating. Actually, how we're helping the team further. This is actual value. So it's not so much about the IP itself, but making those companies investment ready. This is the actual value creation part, and that I think we have find a really common nice ground with the companies, that they are happy to accept those services, and then this kind of good evidence is this Swedish model where the IP belongs to the professors and the researchers. They are still coming back to those investment companies, asset management companies, and willing to get the value to make those companies investment ready. So this is kind of the good transparent model, that if there is value, they will come and you will help them to become investment ready, and then we'll work further. So I think the making this expectation management as clear and as transparent as possible, and then I think this bureaucracy, you already kind of like making it reducing a lot by making the rule beforehand. So and explaining it very well. This communication was already once said about. It's not about so much that there are rules and regulations are hard to understand, but sometimes they're too late to understand, and then this is causing the problem. So if we're knowing already beforehand what are the obstacles, what I have to meet, and what are the frictions that we have to overcome, then actually on time you can work with them in a normal pace. But quite often we see the hard cases when we are figuring out the principal obstacles too late, and then it's too little to do. So I think this is not really the case where no one wants to be.
Mm-hmm. So switching from a institutional organizational research perspective only to a more investor perspective. So if you want to get these spin-offs ready, to get the fundraiser later on, I think that's that's very important to understand this perspective as well. How do investors think and act? So and based on this, how you need to transition the spin-off, the idea, the product, whatever, the team into this direction. I think that's very important. And some universities and research institutions already have this, but some have moved or haven't switched to this perspective yet. Okay, great. Mart, thank you. Marius, Orsolya, your points on this. You want to add?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics, because if you want to make a deep tech founder cry at a party, just ask him or her about the IP transfer process from the university. Yeah. So because for most have really a bad experience with that. So many founders tell me, and I can sing my own story about this. Many people say it just took too long, yeah, and it was just too complicated to negotiate with the university. And if you look at Europe, so it's a little bit different in each country. So you just mentioned Sweden, where it belongs to the researchers. In Germany, the IP belongs to the university, so there needs to be a contract with the university, and then in Germany, you have the complication that sometimes it's not owned by the university itself, but by a patent sort of office that is somewhere centralized, not at the university. They have no idea about the technology. And then you have extreme examples, and maybe Orsolya, you can say something about it in the UK, where the universities take 20, 30, even 40% sometimes of the equity, which is just crazy and not fundable from an investor perspective. So this is a really, really big topic. And I think we need sort of a very radical solution here in order to fix this. Because on the university side, there's a lot of the people are scared to violate European subsidy laws if they give away the patents too cheap. Right. And so these people, they have they're just scared. They don't have an incentive to help the startups. They're not profiting in any way if they give it cheaper or more expensive. And so they will always opt for the safest options, which is always to make it very expensive. And so we need to help those people by giving a very clear guideline and say, okay, there are more standards for IP transfer. And my recommendation really is to go in, because it's very difficult to value a patent at that early stage. How much is it worth? Nobody knows. Yeah. So when I did my spin-off from the university, I had to pay cash for my patent, a 6-figure number, and nobody knew if this was right or not right. Yeah. And so what I would suggest is to trade it for little equity. Yeah. So 1 patent, 2%, 2 patents, 4%. And the cap is at 6%, regardless of the amount of patents, and not real equity, but virtual shares, right? Because then the university doesn't have to bother about it. They don't sit at the shareholder meetings, yeah. But if all goes well, they will benefit from this. So they have very little effort in doing this, but they have a nice upside potential if the companies goes well. So from my perspective, this is the easy solution. And I know there are a lot of counter arguments for that because it's taxpayer money and so forth, but the money is already spent. If the company is not started, the value is exactly zero. So why not having a call option with 2, 4, or 6% on something really great? And so I would radically make this easier, transparent with virtual shares. Okay.
So first, involving people who have experience or know the industry standards and not make deep tech founders cry all the time in Europe, at least. Okay, understand? Yes. I see already Dejan and Werner already observing us. So we're going to move into like the last part. We'll make it short, okay? And then we can start with the Q&A. Now going more into a macro perspective, macroeconomic perspective, so the political, economic factors and so on. So from all of you, very shortly, ideally. So in order to foster a spin-off ecosystem, what does it take? Which factors are most important, or the most important one in your perspective? And does it have to focus on a specific, for instance, topic of industry to start? Maybe every one of you can just share like in one sentence what he or she thinks. Starting with Orsolya.
Thank you. Can I just very quickly on Marius, okay?
Sure.
Also, entrepreneurship doesn't have to have an IP, okay? So that's like this whole thing. Yes, for deep tech, yes, we have that. And then universities needs to up their game big time on that. And Cambridge is not always getting it right either. It took like a good 60 years to get it to the stage where it is right now. And Herman Hauser played a huge role in that, to actually getting the government aligning and the university aligning with that. But when you want to start a company, when you see a problem, when you have know your market, know who needs it, know how big it is. With all of the digital components, with all of the AI being there, the rules are changing anyways. But I think within universities, it's so important as well to be there at the negotiation process. Like the entrepreneurship centers, people who helping scientists become entrepreneurs or along those journey, it's a hand-holding bit as well, because you need to have that negotiation process, because you can't expect them to do the negotiation at first time. I think there's something that, but okay, politics. So for that, I think it's there's two things that I will add, make it sweet and short. Mission-oriented strategy. You need a strategy. You cannot have plans without a strategy. And I think the strategy needs to be aligned with what the country's strength is actually lied in. And that requires a very joint collaborative thinking from the public, private, and third sector coming together to actually outlining that what are the areas within a country where innovation should be focused and boosted onto. And that is really much down to the capabilities of the country itself. So we cannot imitate models that exist in a high-tech cluster or in a biotech cluster in place where maybe that's not the strength of the ecosystem. So what exactly the regional, national strengths? What is the strategy? How the strategy is actually designed by all three sectors combining the things together? And is there a mission that we are actually aligning ourselves towards, that we want the country to be known for or achieve for? And that's what I've seen in Lithuania, that what they've achieved in the past 5 years, 5 to 10 years, that growth, and Estonia, same way. You have a very strong drive towards one specific area or strategy that you're pushing forward. Like in the UK, we've got 5 at the moment set by the government and UKRI, and then we're sort of pushing our innovations toward that, but with a mission that we need to transform tomorrow with science and with technology. And that's something that requires all actors coming together and then lead that. And I think that's very important from a political point of view.
Super, thank you very much. Marius, very shortly.
Yes, I think strategy comes first. Exactly that. Do you have a lack of the resources? You cannot win all the games. So I think this is it's hard to make those choices, but this is definitely needs to be made. Maybe another like the dimension is that it's the beauty of the deep techs that those companies are going to the global market, or at least like the broadly regional. So it means that the local between the universities or even regionally between the universities, there is no competition from that point of view. It's only collaboration opportunity. Everyone will win. So if you have the kind of technology, you will bring in talents, attract talents, they will come, capital comes, and then you can build it further. So I think this understanding that is the risk is that if Estonia is a super small country, so but I think still how to play together and how to work together, not only at the country level but also at a bit of regional level. Then I think you're starting to ensure that you have the field experts next to each other, and then I think this kind of like the more diversified teams as well. So that's another like the beauty of it. Not having the same research group who started, actually, it is not the best way to build a company in most cases. So you have to combine different perspectives and different backgrounds. So then I think you're becoming more resilient. So from that point of view, so how your strategy, your country strategy works with the neighboring kind of countries, that's I think is also super important to understand how you can complement each other and how you can help each other. So because I think it's not about that to become better than neighbors. So okay, so not at all. So I think you can be much better by collaborating with the neighbors, and I think it's like the bit more kind of European, US, Asia type of like perspective that you're keeping in mind as when everything goes well.
Super. Marius, very shortly.
Yeah, very shortly. So I think for a successful ecosystem, you need three things. You need capital, you need technology, and you need people. And so the technology is mostly like it sort of depending on where you are, there is sort of always an origin or sort of a specific focus just by nature, right? Capital always comes where good opportunity is. So don't worry about capital really. So the third thing is the one that we need to influence. I think this is getting the best people together. And this is where I think where we can always get better. I always call this co-founder matching. So what I also see at a technical university, sometimes you have great scientists, but you don't have what it takes to really build a diverse and a diverse team regarding the skill set. And so what I think what if we really want to build successful ecosystems, we need to focus on the talent side and really bring the best people together from diverse backgrounds and diverse academic backgrounds to really build the best companies. To other factors, we cannot influence that much, but this third factor, I think, is the winning link in building a good ecosystem.
Super conclusion. Thank you for all your input. I head over to Dejan and Werner regarding the questions from the audience. Are there questions from the audience?
Yes, there are several questions. Thank you so much for this panel. And I think there is the best I can now continue is a quote from one of our potential founders. As a biotech student, you are so busy with learning that it is very hard to also focus on entrepreneurship. So I think what you also said, that we really train and raise the awareness for entrepreneurship at the university on different levels, not only student, postdoc, but I think also on the professor's level. And this leads me to the next question, which is really, I think, one of the crucial points in our discussions. How to give techies the knowledge to enable them building a company? Rather train them to become an entrepreneur, or should we find co-founders and financial experienced people as a co-founder to form teams? So maybe this would be very interesting to get your experience. You tapped into this several times in the discussion, but what is your focus on that? Is it a either or? How do you see this? Maybe Orsolya, I start with you, yeah?
Yes, that's a very good question. And that's exactly the experimenting. So entrepreneurship also an experimentation, right? If you're a scientist, that's what you do. So you're already an entrepreneur in one way or another because you experiment, you fail. So you do that on a daily basis. So you've got the basic skills for that. But on another level, I think what we've done at the University of Cambridge, but also at Cranfield, and then what I'm trying to do in other universities as well, is I think there's a core training around entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship comes with a basic of business knowledge. There are a lot of programs, one of the programs called Enterprises or Ideas to Innovation, but they're all about building blocks of what exactly it takes to take an idea and then how to take that idea into the stage of building a business case. So you've got the certain building blocks that is simply skill development through business. Now, how do you match people? we also did that inside the university, we also engaged with the business school and then included their MBAs and executive MBAs in this process. And then also some of the master students to sort of do some due diligence, some basic due diligence, working together with the researchers to actually use their knowledge, their assignment into building the knowledge hub that maybe helps scientists as well to see the commercial potential of their work through that. So there's definitely an internal collaboration across departments and between departments is very important for building a good entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Thank you. Another question from Bernhard Strauss is, are the academic tech startup ecosystem not always more artificial in terms of economics evolution than the general startup dynamics? Maybe Marius, you could answer this question. So is there a difference between our spin-off world and the normal startup world?
Yeah, I would say that there's a difference between deep tech and tech. So to say it that way. So because if you are a deep tech startup, your biggest challenge is not the market. So for a tech startup, if you want to sell something, if you have a software startup, it very quickly goes into revenue and how to increase revenue. If you are a deep tech startup, it's what you do could be a paradigm shift to the industry you're working on. So for a long time, you don't have any revenues at all because you're still developing the technology. And then if you hit the market, it might really lead to a big shift. So what maybe the question really alludes to is to the artificial world of deep tech, because you're operating a little bit outside of the market for a certain time. You still need to be in contact with your potential customers, otherwise you will develop in the completely wrong direction. But you cannot get this rapid market feedback as you can get as a software or as a tech company. So yes, the nature of building a deep tech startup is fundamentally different from my perspective than from building a tech company. But where it is the same, you have to sort of simulate this market. Even if you are not yet in the market with the technology, you need to get your customer feedback. You need to get this input. Otherwise, you will move into the wrong direction. So this is where things become similar again, but the approach is very different.
Thank you. With the last comment from the TTO of the University for Life Science here in Vienna, from Michaela, legally, due to the Patent Act, it is not easy to simply take shares in a spin-off if non-founding inventors are involved. You know, our big question with the non-founding professors, you tackled it. You have to be very careful. With that, I would like to hand over to Dejan.